Yeah.
Okay. Super. We are in business.
Yeah.
Okay.
This speakers are making this noise.
Yeah. Do you think we have to put off this one?
It's off.
Where is that noise coming from?
I have no idea. Usually it shouldn't.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's better. Let's turn it off. All right. So these are the four methods we looked at yesterday. And remember, in distance-based tree building method, we have to first calculate pairwise genetic distance, and we use the pairwise genetic distance then to generate our tree. And this pairwise distance can be even morphological distance and so on. And today we'll be talking about three other approaches that fall under something called the character state approach. And I'll explain what this means in a minute. So in the character state approach, we go from sequence alignment directly to phylogeny. There is no intermediate step of calculating pairwise genetic distance. There are three approaches here: maximum parsimony, maximum likelihood, and Bayesian inference. We'll go over all of them. In the morning, we'll go over parsimony and likelihood, and in the afternoon, Bayesian approach. All right. So the first character state approach is maximum parsimony, but why is it called character state approach? Right? So again, we go back to this alignment that we've been looking at. And remember, each column in this alignment is a character. There are 9 characters here, and this character has multiple states. Right? So this is DNA data, so it has 4 states. Right? And in character state approach, we are treating each character independently, right? While evaluating the tree. Whereas in the distance-based tree building method, you are converting all these characters, the differences in characters, into a single number, pairwise distance, right? And that's why people have argued that the character state approach is much more superior, because we are reconstructing the evolution of each site on a tree. Right? So how do we do this? So in a way, there's no loss of information, in the sense that we are going from sequence alignment directly to phylogeny, whereas in the distance-based tree building method, there is an intermediate step where we calculate genetic distance, and then that is used to build the tree. Right? Okay. Now let's go back to the 3 possible trees. One can unrooted trees, one can generate in a 4 taxa situation. Now the question is, which among these 3 trees is the true evolutionary relationship? It shows the true evolutionary relationship between these 4 species. Right? So the first method is parsimony, and basically parsimony, this is the same idea as in cladistics, right? Cladistics also uses parsimony to come up with the best tree. So parsimony is basically a tree that needs minimum number of nucleotide substitutions or changes to explain the differences that we observe between the sequences. Okay, and here we are using the principle of parsimony, and we want an optimal tree or an optimal cladogram, which basically is a tree or a cladogram that needs the minimum number of changes. Yeah, parsimony is the principle of endorsing the simplest explanation that covers the case. Okay. Now, these things you can't see, but anyway, so, hey, have we also given them this PDF of this handbook? No. Okay. All right, we can try and give that. And this other book is the one that I was talking about, which is here. If you're interested, you can buy that. So each chapter that I cover, I've also written where in which chapter of this book you can get more information of these books. By the way, this book, Phylogenetic Handbook, it's a pretty nice book which you can download for free in certain websites. That's what we have done. So you didn't get it from us. We haven't given it to you as yet. I think it's not there in that folder, but remember to just take a copy of that. Okay, now, so which among these three trees is the optimal tree, the most parsimonious tree? How do we do that? Like we've already done parsimony. But let me walk you through this. So the best way to determine the tree length is to go step by step for every site, right? And do that for all the three trees. So now let us just look at tree 1. Okay, tree 1, human and chimpanzee are sister to each other. Gorilla and orangutan are sister to each other. And let's look at character number 1. And replace these taxa with the character. Okay, so human has a G, chimpanzee has a C, orangutan has a A, gorilla has a C. Okay, all right, so now we have done that. Now the question is, what character state does this ancestor have? Any ideas? If we are using the principle of parsimony, this state could be A, C, T, or G. But which one do you think it is most likely?
C.
C, yeah. Why? Why did you say C? Yeah, it's present here, it's present here. If you put a C there and a C there, it would need two changes to explain the differences that you observe in this tree, right? So in fact, C is the right answer. You can go through and put in a lot of other bases, and you realize that all of them need more number of changes, right? So here we are using the principle of parsimony, so we want to reduce the number of changes. Okay, so when we put C here, one change here, two changes. Maybe it's a G because there's a G here and there's a A here. If you do that, it needs three changes. One change here from G to a C, one change here from A to a C, and one change here either from G to a A or from A to a G, depending on how the tree has been rooted. If you put both A's, again, more number of changes. If you put both G's, again, more number of changes. So the most parsimonious reconstruction is this here because it needs the least number of changes given this tree. Right? Okay, any questions at this point in time? Everyone is following this? Yeah? Okay. Now that was character number 1. Tree number 1. Remember, we have just looked at one tree now, right? Two changes. Now let's go on to character number 2. It's a T, right? So it's a T, 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 and T. This is a no-brainer. The ancestor state must be a T. So this is an invariant site, and it is totally uninformative. Okay. Then we go on to character number 3. One change, right? It's an A here in orangutan, C, 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 C. So the most parsimonious reconstruction would be C in the ancestral nodes, right? And this is a singleton. This is what is the term, the technical term we use? It's found only in one taxa. Huh? Yesterday we discussed unique change. In cladistics, the term that people use is apomorphy, but you don't have to worry about it. It's basically a unique change. And a unique change is uninformative, again. because it does not really, remember I said, even if you change the tree topology, the number of changes is going to be just one. So such unique changes in parsimony is uninformative. Whereas if you are using a distance-based method, it will cluster these three together. Okay? All right, what about character number 4? It's A here, C here. So this ancestor is an A, this ancestor is a C, one change here. This is a synapomorphy, which actually supports this tree, right? Character number 5 is again a unique change in orangutan. Okay. Character number 6, uninformative. Character number 7, again a unique change in orangutan. Right. Character number 8. Yeah, this is somewhat similar to character number 1, where the most optimal reconstruction is C over here. And character number 9 is again a synapomorphy. Okay? So, now if you count up all these changes, that is the total tree length. Right? So, tree 1, these are all the changes needed for each of those characters. What you can also do is overlay all these changes onto the tree. Did everyone follow what I've done here? Right? So I've just taken all these cuts for each of those characters and put it on one tree, and these numbers correspond to the characters. Fine? So character number 1, one change here, one change here. Character number, I think 8 is also one change here, and so on. If you just count up the number of changes, that gives you the tree length. So that's 9. So you can count it on the tree or over here. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 changes. So this tree needs 9 changes to explain the differences that you observe between sequences. Okay? Now, why don't you calculate for tree number 2? Right now. Okay, so let me show you tree number 2. There's tree number 2. And there is the alignment. So, tree number 2 is human, gorilla, chimpanzee, orangutan. Right? So what do you do first? You replace this by the basis. Right? So what I would actually do is build 7 trees, same tree, 9 times, But for some of them you don't have to because you know they're invariant, right? So actually the invariant sites you can ignore. So I think it will be 7 trees, right? And for each tree, mark out the changes.
The character 4 has equal possibility for tree 2.
Tree character 4, huh? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's an equal possibility of the
No, this is A. Chimpanzee is A. Yeah.
So this is also C and the other one is C. So the-
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, pick one, no problem. So this is two equally parsimonious ancestral reconstructions. So right now we are not very much interested in what is the actual ancestor, as long as we get an accurate number as to how many changes. So just pick one. Okay, remember you don't have to worry about character number 2. It's a 0. And character number, there's one more, right? 6, huh? Yes, character number 6. Okay, done, people? Done? Shall we quickly go over? Okay, let's just quickly go over it. Yeah, we'll just quickly go over it. All right. So, character number 1. Character number 1, it's G over here. Human is G, right? And chimpanzee is C. These are gorilla and orangutan are C and A. So what would you? So C and C, right? So one change here, one change here. Got it, everyone? All right. So character number 2 of is invariant, right? One change. Yeah? No, it's invariant, child. Character number 2 is invariant. Okay, character number 3 is an A in where? Orangutan, huh? And everything else is C. See, remember I told you this singletons are not informative because even here it's just giving you one, right? So it's one change here. Okay, what about character number 3? Okay, just tell me what's for human, character number 3? C? And chimpanzee?
This is the character.
Praveen, this
Huh?
will be character 4 because they're skipping.
Oh, character 4, sorry. Yeah. Okay, character 4. Yeah, what is character, human, character 4? A. Chimpanzee? A.
Yeah.
Okay, this?
C.
C. C? Okay, so it can either be C or it can be A. Either way it's 2, so we just pick one of them. Whichever base you pick, the change will be correspondingly in the other branch, right? So it does have implications for branch lengths, okay? All right, so because there's already C here, so I'm just going to pick C, let's not worry about it. So that means one change here and one change here. Okay, what about character number, we are going to character number 5, right?
One change in orange.
Character number 5, which is the only species that has a different base?
Orangutan.
Orangutan has what?
G.
G. And the rest have? C. So it's one change here. Okay, character number 6? Nothing? Invariant site? Okay, character number 7?
One change.
Wait, what are the states?
T and G. Human T,
Huh.
chimp T,
Yeah.
gorilla T,
Huh.
orangutan G.
G. So one more change here. Again an invariant site. We're done with 7, right? 8 is? What is human?
G.
G. Okay. Chimpanzee?
C,
C.
T,
Oh, T.
C.
C. Okay. So, yeah, this is definitely C,
Huh.
right? This could be a C, or it could be a G, or it could be a T. All of them will give you the same number of changes. Does that make sense, everyone? Yeah? Because there's already a C here, I am being lazy, so I'm going to leave it as C. Okay? So that will mean one change here and one change here. Is everyone following it? You might have given a different character state, that's okay. As long as the number of changes remain the same. Okay, that was what? Character number 8. Huh? Character number 9. What is it here?
T,
T. Here?
T,
T. C.
C.
Okay. All right, so here again, it could be a T or a C, and because there's already C in there, so I'm going to leave it at C and put 2 changes here and here. Okay, now if you count up the number of changes, what do you get? 1, oh my god, this branch, look, there's no change at all. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 changes. Right? And our earlier tree was 9. So that's more parsimonious than this. Yeah? So it's as simple as that. Okay? So, let's see if we did the calculations right. Tree number 2, 11 changes. Okay? So again, these changes might be different depending on where you put the ancestral state. Right? And turns out tree number 3 is also 11 changes. Right? So the most parsimonious tree is tree number 1. Okay? Everyone's with me? Cool. Now, these changes, you can count them up for each branch. So here I've done it for the most parsimonious tree. For example, this branch here has 4 changes, this branch has 2 changes, 4, 1 change, right? So, but that's not the most parsimonious tree. This is the most parsimonious tree. And for the most parsimonious tree, I have put down the number of changes, right? And our most parsimonious tree was this. 1 change here, 2 changes here, 1 change here, 4 changes here, 1 change here. That is what I've done here. Okay. Now this is an unrooted cladogram with branch number, length written on it, but the branches are not scaled. Right. Now here I've scaled the branches. So 4 changes here, so it's really long, so it will be twice as much as that. This will be twice as much as that, and so on, right? Now, the longest distance between 2 taxa is that. So that is 4 plus 2 plus 1, which is 7. And 3.5 is here, that's your midpoint. Right, so at that midpoint, you then pull it to one side and you get a tree like so. So this becomes 0.5, remember? And this is 3.5. This is 3.5. Right? So this little section becomes 0.5. Okay, and your root is right there. And as always, you know, 2 of these taxa will be lined up. In this case, the longest length could have been that also, so that's why this distance is to the root is the same. Okay, so that is parsimony. Any questions? So yesterday we gave you a alignment. So I would urge you to build a parsimony tree using that alignment. Yeah. Then we can take a look at it. Okay, any questions regarding parsimony? Clear? Okay, now we'll start the fun time. Huh?
What is the software pattern? Just like how we pick the seeds
Yeah, the software, if it'll try out different combinations for the internal nodes, and you know, if there are multiple equally parsimonious ancestral reconstruction, it will probably pick one of them. You know, so when it comes to calculating tree length, it's not an issue. But if you actually want to reconstruct the ancestral sequence, which you can do actually, then this equally parsimonious scenarios become problematic, right? There you can use other tricks to figure out what is the exact. Okay, all right. So again, that's a cladogram, and that's a phylogram, rooted phylogram, right? Remember cladistic approach, we get a phylogram, and it starts with a phi, which is like a phylogeny, right? And because cladists believe that this is the true phylogeny. Whereas the distance-based approach, it is called phenogram or dendrogram, right? Okay. Yeah, this is again, you know, cladogram, phylogram, phenogram or dendrogram. NJ tree corrects for rate heterogeneity, so species are not lined up like this. And when you have a phylogram, you have this little scale here, which tells you how many changes along each lineage. Whereas in case of NJ tree, also you have a scale, but this tells you P distance, because this is distance based, right? This is actual substitutions, and we have actually, you know, and you see for each base, I mean each character, we have mapped it onto the tree, right? So and what kinds of changes have taken place. We are consciously aware of it while we are doing that. Whereas in the distance-based tree building method, all those variations are reduced to a number. Right? Okay. Let us move on. Yeah, I just talked about the branch lengths. What are they called? Number of substitutions along each lineage and all that. All right. Yeah, once again, distance-based tree building method, as I mentioned earlier, the clustering algorithms, strictly speaking, are not evolutionary trees. They are just clustering entities based on overall similarity. Whereas parsimony, it is actually giving you an evolutionary tree because it's based on synapomorphies, right? So basically, whichever if the number of sites that support a particular topology, if there are more of those sites, then those sites are basically synapomorphies, right? In this approach, we are using an optimality criteria, and this becomes important. The optimality criteria here is parsimony, right? We are trying to optimize the tree length. We want to reduce the tree length. So optimality criteria based methods are superior because they evaluate multiple topologies. Whereas distance-based tree building methods don't, they just spit out a tree, right? Except for least square and minimum evolution, where multiple trees are evaluated. Okay. All right, let's just, yeah, as I said, parsimony is like a cladeistic approach. But the problem with parsimony is it does not use a model of sequence evolution to correct for multiple hits. Remember these changes from C to a T or whatever, we are just assuming that only one change has occurred. But yesterday we discussed, nucleotide substitution models, where we discussed the issue of multiple hits. So this might have gone from C to something else and then to a T. So that is not taken into account in case of parsimony, right? So that's why, that's the disadvantage of parsimony, right? And these such changes can result in homoplasy, where two taxa have the same, base, but actually the way they got to that is very different. Okay. One can actually use different transition to transversions ratio to correct for it to a certain extent in parsimony, but by and large, big problem with parsimony is does not use a model of sequence evolution. Just keep that in mind. So that's why even though parsimony is basically cladeistic approach, its popularity has gone down because it does not use a model. And the model-based tree building methods have gained prominence in the last 20 years. Okay, so now we'll move on to the model-based tree building methods. Okay, any questions regarding parsimony?
I don't know, this may be a very nice question, but
Yeah.
What do you exactly mean by model of sequence evaluation?
We discussed yesterday, no?
That hidden changes.
Yes. We talked about Jukes-Cantor, Kimura two-parameter model, HKY, Fresnel-Stein's 81, and there's so many. There are in fact 64 different models. These models try to explain patterns of nucleotide substitutions. We talked about how P distance can be divided into alpha and beta, right? Transitions and transversions. So if your data set has a lot of transversions or a lot of transitions, and you don't correct for it, then you might get an erroneous tree. And that's when you use Kimura 2-parameter model that corrects for transitions to transversions and all that. In parsimony, you cannot do that. So whereas the model-based methods, you can actually correct for all those hidden changes. Okay, so let's get down to, any questions regarding parsimony?
The previous slide, it takes into account transitions and transfers. So it means somewhere
It is. You can. So if in mitochondrial DNA, for example, transitions occur 8 to 10 times more often than transversions. So you can weigh transitions more often than transversions. So you can weigh transversions 8 times higher because they are rarer. Right? And how do you do that? I don't know if this is a transition or transversion. What is this? Is this a transition or transversion? This is a transversion. It's a transition or transversion?
pyrimidine to pyrimidine.
So it's a transition. Okay. So now let's change this to a G or something. Then it becomes a transversion?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what you can do is, because transversions are very rare, and let's see that there's only one change. Right? Oh, it is gone there. Let's say there's only one change, C to a G. Now you're counting it as only one change. But transversions are very rare. Transitions happen 8 times more often. So what you do is you weigh this more. You say that I'm going to, because this is so rare, it's 8 times less often than transitions. Instead of counting it as one change, I'm going to count it as 8 changes. Whereas a transition, this happens very often, so I'll just count it as 1. Right? And that goes into your calculation of tree length. Okay? So that is one way you can correct for this. All right, shall we move on? Okay. So let's do likelihood, and I want all of you guys to be awake and alive for this, because it's not a terribly complicated concept, but can be very confusing. And if you do not understand likelihood, then you won't understand Bayesian inference either, because Bayesian inference also uses a likelihood framework, okay, a likelihood function. To me, it's just a variation of likelihood. You tell that to someone, a Bayesian fanatic, he or she will kill you. But please try to understand likelihood, okay? So remember, likelihood and Bayesian inference use models of sequence evolution. And that is the fundamental difference and a very important difference between parsimony and these methods. Okay, what is likelihood? Likelihood is basically probability of the data given the hypothesis. So it is written as, I don't have it here. So it's basically probability of the data given the hypothesis. I think that's how it's written. Oh, I have to have it. Oh, I have it here. Yeah. Probability of the data given the hypothesis. Okay. So I have it over here. And this small p is actually something else. It is a hypothesis, but we'll come to that in a minute. Okay, probability of the data given the hypothesis. What does this mean? Let's use a simple example here. Okay. I have a coin, I toss it 4 times. Okay? And the result I get is that. So I get 3 tails and 1 heads. So that is the data. Okay, and this could be your sequence data. So the data I have in hand is 3 tails and 1 heads. Now, one can think of many hypotheses that can give you that kind of data. Okay? One hypothesis is that the coin is fair. The other hypothesis is the coin is not fair. Which hypothesis would you pick given this data? This is not rocket science, guys, come on. Not fair, right? Yeah, of course, one can argue that I've not flipped it enough times. This can just be random error also. You know, but let's say, you flip it like 100 times, and basically you get 75 times you are getting tails and 25 times you're getting heads. So you'll be like, hey, you know what? This is not a fair coin. So you would support that hypothesis, given the data. There you go, you have just done maximum likelihood. So you can think of multiple hypotheses here. Okay? One hypothesis is that, so probability of heads is P, small p. It's a hypothesis. So that means tails would be 1 minus p. So we don't have to keep, calculating, keep telling what is the probability of tails, because it's just 1 minus p. So we'll just say small p for hypothesis. Right? This small p can be 0.25, can be 0.5, can be 0.75, and accordingly you'll have the probability of tails. Right? So here's the different hypothesis. If the coin was fair, then that would be the hypothesis, right? But turns out the coin is not fair because only 25% of the time you're getting heads. So that's your maximum likelihood. And how do you calculate maximum likelihood? It's basically probability of the data given the hypothesis, and so the probability of getting 1 heads is the sequence in which these outcomes appear is not of concern to us. Okay, so probability of heads is P, and then you have 3 tails, and probability of tails is 1 minus P times 1 minus P. Right? So if P is 0.5, then the likelihood would be that. Right? And how did we get that? That's very, very simple. We just use that formula on top. Remember, we have 3 tails and 1 heads, right? And your hypothesis is small p, which is probability of heads, and the probability of tails would then be 1 minus small p. For the 3 tails, you have 1 minus small p cube, and then for this, for heads, you have small p. Right? And that's how you got that formula, right? So if we say that P is 0.5, the coin is fair. This would be 0.5. This would also be 0.5, right? 0.5 into 0.5. Okay, and that should give you that. Okay, now you're like, hey, wait a minute, I don't like this hypothesis. This is hypothesis 1. Hypothesis whatever, 1, which is P equals 0.5. Let me try P equals 0.25. Right? What would happen here? 0.25, 0.75, 0.75, 0.75. When you do that, your likelihood goes up. Right? So, you try out different hypotheses and try to figure out which hypothesis fits the data best. And turns out it is this one. And that's your maximum likelihood. So that's about it. The hypothesis that is most likely to generate the observed data. And in our case, the hypothesis that the probability of heads is 0.25 gives the best likelihood score. Okay, everyone with me? Any questions? Okay, let's just move on then. All right, so maximum likelihood. So the same formula, probability. So likelihood is basically probability of the data given the hypothesis, and then we evaluate different hypotheses. In case of tree building, the data is the sequence data, and the hypothesis is the tree. So you look at different trees and pick the tree which is most likely to generate the sequences that you have, right? And for those sequences to be generated, there has to be a model of sequence evolution that tells you how these sequences are evolving over the tree, right? So that's why you have a model of sequence evolution here. Okay? So in case of likelihood, it incorporates an explicit model of sequence evolution, and one can also do some statistical tests for evolutionary to test various evolutionary hypotheses. Okay, so the main part of here is data. Here is the sequence, hypothesis is the tree, and the model of sequence evolution. So what do? You build all possible trees, just like in parsimony, and then given this model of sequence evolution and you have your data, you calculate the likelihood and you pick the tree with the highest likelihood, and that's your maximum likelihood tree. Okay, actual calculation of likelihood is quite laborious. Okay, so we'll just try out Jukes Cantor, so stay with me here. To give you an idea of how messed up this is, let's go back to a simple tree here, a rooted phylogeny. Let's look at only site number 1. Okay, I've replaced the basis from site number 1. Now, the ancestor could be ACE, it could be T, it could be that combination, God knows. Right? What you have to then do is, what is the probability? Then you have to calculate the probability of getting these bases at the tip given those ancestral state. Probability of getting these bases here given these ancestral state. Probability of getting that given these ancestral states. Right? And you can think of many other combinations. You then add up all of that, all those probabilities, And that gives you the likelihood of this sequence given this tree. Huh? No, it's summation of probabilities of all possible ancestral reconstructions. Okay, so it is something called compounded likelihood, right? So these are all the possible. I mean, there are more possibilities, and for each of them you get a probability and you likelihood, and you sum them up, right?
Considering the order also.
I'm sorry.
I think they're considering the order also in it, that's why.
Order in the sense.
A, after A, C.
Here it would matter, right? Because we
Here
have
could
the
have also
consistent states.
Yeah, that's why we are adding up.
Yeah. It will be each consideration will be a separate case, right? Case A where all of those ancestral traits are A, then maybe A is C. So every case will be different.
Different.
Additive.
Yeah, yeah. So, all these combinations are put, I mean, I've not put down all the combinations. I don't know how many combinations there are. So you have 3 nodes and 4 bases, right? So for each of those, you have to calculate the likelihood, add them all up. So then that gives you the probability of getting this data given this tree, right? Okay, so, oh, and by the way, this is only for one site. Right, so you need to now do that for every site. Yeah, and then you have to move on to another topology, right? So it is quite an ordeal. So to give you an idea, let's look at again just site number 1, right? And route it over here. So the internal nodes here are Y and X, and let's just route it over here, and that's the route Z. Human has a G, chimpanzee has a C, gorilla has a C, orangutan has a A. Okay, so that's tree number 1, site number 1. Okay. Now there are branch lengths here. Okay, we don't know, we have to infer the branch length. Okay, so V1 is the branch length leading from this node to G and so on. Okay, now likelihood of this site would then be probability of change of some base here. So it can be A, T, G or C. Remember, only the tips we have the information. All the internal nodes can be A, T, G, and C, right? So probability of change from some base here to some base here, given the branch length V5. Okay, in this bracket is the branch length. Times probability of change of some base at X to G, given branch length V1. Times probability of change from here to here given branch length V2. So we have finished this part of the tree. And this whole thing is this part of the tree. Okay? What you have here is the frequency of this ancestral base. Okay? And that is the prior probability that this ancestor has that base. Okay, and this will become clear in a minute. If we assume equilibrium base frequency of 0.25, 0.25, 0.25, and 0.25, then this becomes 0.25. Okay? All right. So remember X, Y, and Z are A, T, G, and C. So once again, we have to try all those combinations to then come up with the likelihood. That's the formula. Okay. And branch length, V is mutation times mutation rate into, so V, which is branch length, is mu, which is mutation rate into time. So it's mu t. Okay. Yeah, so as I said, X, Y, and Z could be A, T, G, and C. So basically, we have to try out in all combinations, and that's a lot. Just to walk you through one possibility, right? Okay, so this, for example, could be can be A, T, G, and C. So A, T, G, and C. Right? This we still haven't plugged in anything. That's why I still have an X there. Right? So these are the 4 possibilities over here. Similarly, you'll have to expand each one of these. And again these. And these and so on. So you can imagine the amount of calculation that has to be done. Right? Is everyone following this? So it's a nightmare. Okay? So I'm not going to, this is again, explaining, how many summations and all that. It's a nightmare. So what Joseph Felsenstein did was he was one of the first people to introduce likelihood in phylogenetics. So he came up with a very simple solution. It's called tree pruning. So he said, instead of going from the root to the tips, let's go from tips to the root. Okay? So start from tips and then go to the root. Okay? So once again, you have this tree here, and let's just look at this part of the tree. Okay? Gorilla and chimpanzee. Gorilla and chimpanzee. So gorilla has a C, chimpanzee has a C. Wait, what am I doing here? Something is wrong. Hang on. Sorry, those are the bases. Okay. So this tree is, I suppose, that tree, right? So that's tree. So human, chimpanzee, gorilla, orangutan. For the first site, so human, chimpanzee, gorilla, orangutan. For the first site, human is G, chimpanzee is C. Okay. So anyway, so now let us just look at this tree. So what we have done for one particular topology, for one particular site, we have just taken one part of the tree to understand this. So, and we'll calculate from tip to the root. Okay, so if you just consider this tree, the formula is like so. Probability of change. So one is fx is the prior probability of some base over here. Then probability of change from that base to a G given branch length V1, probability of change times probability of change of some base here to C given V2. Okay, so that's straightforward, right? So we just expanded because this could be A, T, G, and C, right? So we say, okay, if it is an A, prior probability of A, so A to a G given V branch length V1, then A to a C given branch length V2. If this were a T, T to G given V1, T to C given V2, if it were a G, and so on. Okay, so that's actually quite doable, right? Now, what is the probability of change here? That is your model of sequence evolution. That is where model of sequence evolution comes into play. And remember, we talked about Jukes-Cantor model and probability of change in Jukes-Cantor model, Pij. All these changes are equally likely, and probability of no change, Pii, is given by that formula. We talked about how we got this formula, right, yesterday. Remember, e to the power minus b is probability of no mutation. And we get that formula from this sort of a